Hello fellow stackers, 365 here, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the importance of starting to stack silver. Now there's many people, and you might be one of these people watching today's video, that have heard about stacking silver and have watched some videos, you've read some books, but you're sitting on the fence about actually pulling the trigger and buying your first piece of silver. And that is what I'm going to talk about in today's video, the importance of just buying that first piece of silver. Now, it's easy to get caught up with looking at all different websites and trying to work out the best price and the best place to buy from. And should I buy from eBay? Should I not buy from eBay? Should I buy straight from the Royal Mint? Should I not buy straight from the Royal Mint? And I think the most important thing is to remember that the first step of stepping onto a ladder is the start of your journey. Now, whether you get that first step right or wrong, it's not really important. It's important that you've taken that first step. Now, if you was to go on eBay and you was to buy a piece of silver and it turned out to be fake, that is still a very important lesson. Mistakes always turn into lessons if you learn from them. So if you was to get your first piece from eBay and like I said, it turned out to be fake, that is still not a bad thing. That is a great place to be in, to be able to learn from your very first purchase in a way that not many of us learn until a lot further down the line. Most of us start by taking the safe option. For me, I started buying from the Royal Mint when I first started heavily stacking, and that was because I wanted to guarantee its authenticity, and also I didn't really know where else to go to pick it up. But as your journey progresses, further down the line, that is where most people make the mistakes of picking up a fake piece of silver, because they do start branching off to these different avenues. They start going to the second-hand market, they start looking at eBay and all these different places where you can pick up silver for cheaper than if you went straight to the Royal Mint. Now, for you to learn your lesson with the very first purchase is something that, like I said, lots of people don't learn till much further down the line. So even if you're, and this is worst case scenario, but even if your very first piece turned up to be fake from eBay, that is a very, very important lesson. It will make you do a little bit more research next time. You'll look into the seller. You'll ensure he has 100% feedback. You'll ensure he's sold over 1,000 pieces on his eBay store. You'll ensure that he specializes in precious metals, and you can see that he specializes in selling coins and bars, and he's not just selling a couple of bits of coins here and there in between trainers and t-shirts. All these different things you'll learn from that very first purchase. So my advice in today's video is stop sitting on the fence, stop researching where to buy your first piece of silver from. Just go out and make that first purchase, because whether it's a positive or a negative experience, it's still part of your journey. It's still the first step onto that bottom step of the ladder to start building up a stack, to start preserving your wealth away from the banks, and start protecting yourself from the inflation. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the problems with the banks and the problems with printing money in today's video, because I wanted this video to be a little bit more of a shorter form video to get those people, like I said, that are sitting on the fence to pull the trigger and go out and buy their first piece of silver. But if we very quickly look at some of the reasons and the flaws with why I think it's very important to at least have some of your portfolio in physical form, is if we have a look at the banks, for example, the banks don't actually hold all of the money on the records that they actually say they hold. So let's use a smaller example. If you was to go to a bank and you was to deposit £10 into the bank is able to lend up to, I think it's 10 times what a deposit has been paid in. So let's say, going by that example, say you was to pay £10 into your bank account, now the bank is allowed to lend out another £100 to someone else. So in fact, they're actually lending out more money than they physically have access to. So if we look at that at a larger scale, if there was, say, 500 people that all went to a bank at any one point and they all tried to withdraw their entire balances from the bank physically wouldn't have that money in their cash reserves. Even if they made a few calls around to certain other different banks, depending on how much it was, they would still struggle to scrape that sort of money together to be able to pay out all 500 people. Now, if we take that to an even larger scale and there was a global crisis, similar to what we've just gone through in the last couple of years, and everyone's panicking and they're hearing about banks are struggling and banks are closing down left, right and centre like we've seen in the US, and everyone starts to go to the bank, then we have an even larger problem, and we have a repeat of something that's actually happened here in the UK many years ago. And I'm not going to name the bank, but do go and do your research. Many years ago this happened in the UK, and everyone was running to the bank. The bank physically ran out of money, and because the government didn't want it to turn into a huge problem across the whole of the UK, the government actually bailed the bank out. They were actually getting money trucks coming in through the back door. They were lending the bank this money just so that people could continue to withdraw their cash, so it never actually stopped. So if the government wouldn't have stepped in and done that, or if it would have carried over and people would have gone to all their own individual banks and not just this one particular bank, the government obviously wouldn't have been able to cope with that and be able to logistically be able to bail out every single one of the banks if that was happening to all the different banks. So they got control of the situation very quickly, and as it was, they managed to get everyone their money back with the government bailing out the bank. The bank subsequently closed down and peace was essentially restored. But we do have to look, if things was to go the other way and that didn't happen, it would get to a stage where the banks would completely run out of money and they wouldn't be able to pay back everything that you are owed. So that is an extreme version of what could happen. Going back to what I was saying about money being printed and inflation, every single year they are printing more and more currency, physical currency. And when I say physical currency, I mean £10 notes, £20 notes, £50 notes, £5 notes, £1 coins, £2 coins. The actual physical money, the currency that you use to spend in the shop, they are printing more and more every single year. But they're actually printing every single day. If you have a look at kind of the smaller scale, Mr. Joe Bloggs that goes down to his bank today to take out a mortgage to buy a new house, they don't have to rally round and find that 300,000 to lend him to be able to buy that house. They just essentially type it on the screen and suddenly that money is in his account and it's gone over to his mortgage provider and all the rest of it, and he has a house. So every single day you have it on a smaller scale where people are going to the banks, they're taking out loans, whether it be to buy a new car, a holiday, or like I said, a mortgage to buy a new house. And money is just made up on the spot. It's just printed out of thin air. And if you multiply that by how many people there are in the world, and like I said, look at the bigger picture, look at a year, inflation is at an all-time high at the moment. They do try and hide the figures and make it look like it's not as bad as it is. But if you do a little bit more digging, a little bit more research, you'll see that they keep moving along the goalposts in terms of how they have to report the inflation figures and what classes as a recession and what doesn't class as a recession and all these different things. But the actual inflation rate is at an all-time high. And that is why I think it's very important to be putting your money, your currency like we just spoke about, into physical assets like gold and like silver. Now this stuff can't be printed out of thin air like I just spoke about with the actual currency that they're printing for people for loans and mortgages and all the rest of it. This stuff has to be mined from the ground. And if we have a look at the even larger picture, there's an actual silver deficit at the moment. There's more silver being consumed than there actually is being mined every single year. And again, that's another fact, and all these facts you need to go and fact check yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone that likes silver and makes videos on YouTube. But there's actually more silver being used and consumed in production of electric vehicles, solar panels, and everything else electronic that uses silver in it than we're actually mining out of the ground every year. So this stuff is getting used up very, very quickly. It's not like gold. With gold, the main two purposes and uses of gold are investment and in jewelry. Silver actually has a really important role to play on the planet. It's one of the most reflective metals. It's one of the most conductive metals. And that is the reason why it is used in lots of electronics. And that is the reason why it's been used up so fast. Silver is also used in the medical industry, and there's many, many other different industries across the country and the world that silver is used in. And is, like I said, it's not just being produced into silver bars and people buying them, it's actually being used and consumed every single day. So we're going to wrap the video up there because I didn't want it to go into too long of a video, and it's already coming up to 10 minutes. But the whole purpose of today's video is for those of you that have just stumbled across silver stacking, just stumbled across investing, and you're sitting on the fence, you're not sure where to buy from, just go out and buy your first piece of silver. Forget about looking too much into where it's coming from. You can pick up a silver coin for around about £30, between 30 and £35. So even if you did pick up a fake piece of silver, like I said, it's going to be a very important part of your overall journey, and it's going to teach you that lesson that, like I said, not many of us learn until much further down the line. So thanks very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please smash the like button. Please leave me a comment down below. Please subscribe if you're not already, and please share it to someone that is not necessarily so switched on as you are because you're watching this video, someone that is not very good at necessarily saving their money and preserving their wealth. When you buy a piece like this, let's say this bar cost me £300, I've locked up £300 into this investment. I can no longer just go to the shop and spend it like I would if I had £300 burning a hole in my wallet. And not only is this locking up and stopping me from spending it, it's also slowly increasing year over year as the spot price of silver increases. So it's essentially doing the opposite to what I just spoke about with the fiat currency, where it's been printed and being devalued, and there's more and more of it being made every single day, every single month, every single year. This is a finite supply. Like I said, it's being used up quicker than we can mine it, and therefore the value of this is slowly going up instead of slowly going down. But like I said, I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research, look into everything that I've mentioned in today's video yourself, go down the rabbit hole like I have done over the last few years, and really look into every single individual thing that I've touched upon in today's video. But like I said, thanks very much for watching, and I hope you have a very nice day.